Welcome back to internet sensation YouTube channel, Zephbug. My name is Aiden, and today I'll be your resident haha man. What's the scariest game you've ever played? Does it look like this, or maybe this, or perhaps this? Can you remember where you were? By yourself in your room, or late at night at your friend's house, or perchance playing Obscure 2 in the back of your parents' car on a long family trip you went on? When I was younger, I honestly never dipped my toes into the world of horror games for no other reason than I was afraid of them. I didn't beat Amnesia: The Dark Descent until I was 23 years old. There has been an uptick recently since I have become just more invested in stories as I've gotten older. I've become more invested in immersion and just allowing myself to get lost in these worlds. Naturally, you might think this would worsen my fear for scary games, but no, I'm not a dumb kid anymore. Since the release of the original game in 1999, Team Silent had been working diligently on the sequel to Silent Hill. Basing the game's story off of Russian author Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment and trying to keep the same atmosphere as the first game, they created what is apparently considered one of the greatest games ever. I didn't realize it was so revered. It even went as far to claim itself apparently as one of the first games to be considered games as art, among other games like Chrono Trigger, Super Mario 64, Final Fantasy VII, and Metal Gear Solid 2. I never really had a specific entry in the franchise that called to me, so I tried to look around to see what people considered the best one. So anyways, here's Silent Hill 2.
Oh, hey, thanks for checking out the video. If you enjoy it, maybe subscribe so you can see more like it. This video was kind of a production fucking nightmare, so anything you want to do to support it is greatly appreciated. Anyways, I'll let you check out the rest of the video now. Thanks for watching.
Staring longingly at himself in the mirror is our vehicle for the next however long, James Sunderland. When I first gained control of the video game, I thought something was broken. I apologize to Silent Hill 2 purists, but tank controls kind of suck. If you like them, I'm happy for you, and I hope this year for your birthday you get everything you wanted. But I'm a normal riddle kind of guy, not a hard one. James is on the way to Silent Hill after receiving a letter from his wife, Mary, who he thought to be dead previously, telling him that she is held up in Silent Hill at their special place. He has no idea where this is, so now he's here to search the entire town.
You promised you'd
I really loved the cliffside rest stop view. It was accompanied by the music, which was pretty much just a droning sound, achieving what I assume was the desired effect of being ominous.
Alone there now.
I definitely thought we were gonna hop in this car and take it the rest of the way to Silent Hill, but
But you never did.
no, we just found a map of Silent Hill and then we're leaving the car. Whose car is this? Is that your car? How did you get here? We move on from here and we walk for a while until I find this well that I could save my game at. When I first look in the well, we're met with James's inner thoughts as he sees something at the bottom of it. He can't quite make out what it is, but he gets this uneasy feeling he describes like someone groping around inside his skull. Which I guess that's me. I think we're to assume we are groping around inside his skull right now. I made my way down the path and into a cemetery. A woman is wandering in the middle of it and we stop for a spell just to chit-chat. On edge though, she warns us about going into Silent Hill, saying something is wrong with it. She seems confused though when she says she's looking for her family and thought they were around here. Look around here, and here. What I didn't know I signed up for is one of the longest walking intros in any game I've ever played. I can deal with being scared, but I'll gargle bleach before I'm forced to be patient. Eventually, God willing, we make our way down into Silent Hill. I start trying to go into buildings and look around, but the game keeps me on a pretty straight path. Along this nature walk, we find blood scrapes along the street, and James is like, "Oh man, is that blood?" Then sees a shadowy figure walking away from the scene. This does not alarm him in the slightest. In fact, we go ahead and follow these blood paths as every other road is conveniently blocked off or has completely collapsed into itself, leaving a giant crater in the middle of the road. Honestly, folks, this is a lawsuit waiting to happen. We bend around hoping to cut across back onto the main road, but this is not an option either. James squeezed through a small gate, following a hissing noise that led to a small radio. While he fumbles around with it, an unfamiliar noise comes from his left. It's just a gross cocoon person trying to spread their wings. This is what I would consider the opposite of an option, a thing encouraged not to be something a person considers to do. James disagrees. He snaps off a piece of wood behind him and challenges the cocoon to one-on-one hand-to-hand combat.
Is it dead?
After getting used to the controls a bit though, this proves to be a pretty easy task. It turns out this scene was also meant to convey that the radio makes a static noise whenever there's an enemy nearby, and maybe it was just me, but I didn't really get that when I was playing, but it was a pretty easy mechanic to figure out while I was playing. The atmosphere this game creates with the subtle design choices is really impressive. A good example of this is how the camera moves throughout the environment. It always faces towards structures like buildings or fences. If there aren't any around, it will either be facing behind you or your view will be obscured by a thick layer of fog covering Silent Hill. For me, this created a feeling of claustrophobia and played into the lack of power James was feeling. There was a sense of curling tension throughout the game, with everything just out of sight. Slow and painstakingly, I dredged through Silent Hill, all the while having to avoid two different types of enemies. The aforementioned human cocoon is actually called a lying figure, and their main form of attack is through vomit and aggressive crawling. Also, these beetles called creepers, whose main form attack is this fucking noise. While we're seeing the city sights, we stumble across this poor sucker who didn't understand how strong wood was against these creatures. His notes flew everywhere upon impact, so we took a moment to read them. Good Guy Clumsy over here wrote notes saying him and his friends saw the lying figures, but his friends were convinced they were just people from a distance. Upon an uninvited closer look though, he and his friends, or at least he is now here. I honestly have to wonder if his friends got away and he just got cucked here though. Fortunately, before his death, he wrote some of the creature's habits down. Okay, so the notes said I shouldn't make noise or be seen. I simply wish to not be perceived. Finally, I make my way to the southeast corner of Silent Hill. All things considered, not wildly impressive in terms of size as a city could be. This city has like 8 streets. I've seen towns like double, triple that maybe. You're supposed to read this memo on the couch, but despite my best efforts, I could not get the right angle. I ended up walking around in circles in the area to figure out what I missed until finally I went back in and this time was able to read it as soon as I nudged the couch. Well, it turns out it's a note saying someone was going to meet someone else at Neely's bar around the corner. We jet on over to the bar, and when we go in, we find a map giving us some points of interest around town. James marks all of this down and we head on our way. It's a fairly leisurely jaunt since I know where I'm going this time and tried to avoid enemies along the way. Alright, the map says Martin Street, alright? Let's head down Martin Street. Man, I wonder what's down here. The street's pretty long. Oh, that's what's down Martin Street. Sorry, just gonna grab this key off you. Fortunately, there was still an entire map of the apartment building posted on the notice board right as we entered it. The door to the first floor was locked, so we immediately head up the stairs to the second floor.
My radio went off after entering the second floor. After tactfully dodging a lying figure, I ran into 2 locked doors and had to turn around.
So I started heading back down the hallway, and when I saw this door on the left, I thought to myself, oh, look at the door. And it was just the stairwell again. I'm gonna say that this game is just designed really well to turn you around and make you feel lost and completely push blame off of myself for that one.
Next to the second floor entrance, we found this laundry room with a garbage chute in it, but can't really do much here right now.
A little further down the hall on the second floor, there's a fork in the road and I decide to go left because fuck it, let's be crazy. Trying every door along the way, we head down the hall until we find a room 208. All that could be found when looking around was a television that James says looks completely normal, and a clock in the, I would call it a bedroom, but only a clock sat against one of the walls, so it had some writing on the side of it, but it was too dark to read and barely looked like writing. Well, back into the hall for now. I unceremoniously bludgeoned one of these creatures to death just to see if I could, and then in the next room, finally find a flashlight. As soon as I grabbed it, this unsavory fellow stood up, and when I asked what business they had here, I realized it was in fact just 2 legs stacked on top of each other. Yeah, so this is an enemy called a mannequin, named after the fact that it is just 2 sets of mannequin legs slammed together. With our handy-dandy flashlight, we head back to the clock room. The clock actually has a cryptic message on the side of it, which I think is our first genuine normal riddle we come across, folks. This is it! This will determine if this ever even becomes a video. Am I smart enough to do normal puzzles, or am I brave enough to upload a complete failure of an attempt at a game? I exit the clock room and there is a book nearby with a poem on it that I guess would be the actual riddle here. I didn't find anything else to do here, so I decided to head to the 3rd floor and try my luck at the door. Yahtzee! It's unlocked. When we go through the door, our northern path is gated, but there's a key lying on the other side. James tries to reach through the bars to grab it, but he just wasn't fast enough. Out of the door next to us runs a little girl who kicks the key out of James's hand for what appears to be no other reason than just to feel something. Like the 2nd floor, this one consists of more hallways and locked doors. Occasionally, one was unlocked though, like this one right here. Inside this one, there's finally a gun. It's a shopping, no, grab the gun. What, no, grab the gun. Grab the gun! I'm just gonna shoot myself when I get it. I end up not doing that after remembering my wife waiting in our secret spot, and finally finding the correct side of the gun to grab. Safety first, I suppose. Anyway, we head out to find that little girl and make our way back down to the clock room. When I enter, there's immediately static hissing around us, similar to when an enemy is nearby. While this put me on edge, it turned out to be just this old television here in the corner. This really spooks James, wondering who could have possibly done this. Hello, have you seen where you are? Anybody. Anybody here, anything here that you've seen could have done this. We're finally back in the clock room, and this time I'm super ready to solve this riddle. Except I still have no way of getting the clock case open. Oh, here's a key. Oh, key to room 202? We head back to room 202 that has a small bedroom inside, which appears to be infested by butterflies. Someone should probably call about this. Wildly unsanitary. Also, there's this hole in the wall, and it asks if I'd like to inspect the hole, which, of course, sounds sick. James looks into the hole, but has a hard time seeing anything, so he decides to, get in there. And not just a little bit, I mean, fucking elbow deep in that, James yanks his hand out when it gets touched. So, of course, the logical thing to do after God knows what touched your hand is to reach back in there. Of course, we did hear the sound of a key being placed down, so it was kind of a dead end otherwise. Nonetheless, we now have the clock key, so we head back. I'm honestly not sure what all that riddle shit was about. I just looked at the graffiti on the wall, which had names next to it, and the only line I needed was the one describing the sizes, and I was through. Honestly, easy peasy. And on the other side, there's another apartment room. Ooh. The hallway outside it is immediately disorienting as I make my way to the staircase. I try my luck at the 1st floor, but it's still locked, so back up we go to the 3rd. We enter a room on the corner of this hallway and are finally met with Pyramid Head. They say don't meet your heroes, but I think he really does live up to his name. It drags the creature it had recently captured out from the kitchen and smashes it into the ground. As it's walking away, it looks at the closet, and so James decides the best course of action is, of course, to just start shooting at the monster. With that out of the way, I headed to where the little girl kicked us and found the fire escape key. Fight to the other side of the hallway and take the stairwell down to the first floor, which is located in a different part of the apartment. It's a very long hallway, and every door along the path is locked. However, if you're very patient and just give it the time and wait all the way at the end of the hallway, canned juice. I had to take another look around to realize I missed the key to the courtyard in the room where we saw Pyramid Head bullying that monster. Back down the stairs and out the door, we take the path along the front of the building to the room we started at. Now this door is unlocked, leading out to the courtyard. There's 3 wacky pals taking a dip in the pool. When I noticed they were trying to drown a baby, I had to take action. From the ledge of the pool, I carefully spend many of my bullets shooting at these hooligans. Ah, now I can rescue this child. Oh, this is no baby at all. It was just a shiny coin. It's got a little snake on it. The other apartment buildings are accessible from here, and we have the absolute pleasure of meeting. So there's this guy sticking out of the fridge, which isn't the worst thing we've seen, but poor Eddie here just couldn't take it. He is in here profusely throwing up and assures us he had nothing to do with the dead person in the other room. James takes his word for it and just makes sure that Eddie isn't with Pyramid Head, and we dip. We head back through the courtyard to the other building and back up to the second floor. And at the end of the hallway, we can use the fire escape key to open the door. In this room, there is a combination safe that I have to ignore for now. Down the hall a little, there is a door with a note from a mother to her son saying she is going to run an errand and that the key for this room was left downstairs with his uncle. I head down there to find a locked dresser. Am I to presume that the uncle decided the best place to keep this kid's key was in a dresser with a riddle to open it? To sum it up, we need to put 3 coins with different figures on them in the correct place on the dresser. Unfortunately, I had 1 out of 3. There were 2 rooms on the first floor of this apartment building that I hadn't checked yet. The first door we try has Angela, the girl from the cemetery, lying on the ground. James sees her with a knife and after coming to the conclusion that she's gonna try to kill herself, tries to calm her down. James, being the goofball he is, tells her that he's looking for his dead wife. Angela decides it's time to skedaddle and James doesn't think she should be running around with a knife. Angela, after all of the horror she's seen today, says, "You're right," and then asks James to hold the knife for her. When James says okay, he unintentionally triggered her trap card, which flipped the knife into attack mode. She apologizes one last time before setting the knife down and leaving the room. Should have brought my inhaler. I didn't realize I was gonna be riding a fucking roller coaster today. After processing what just happened, I yanked the knife from the table. Underneath it was also the coin of the prisoner. Convenient. After really racking my brain and trying to figure out what to do, I finally remembered the first building had a trash chute with something stuck in it. Fortunately, the monsters have not been respawning in the hallways, which is just the best. After standing in front of the trash chute for a while, I think to myself, let me try the canned juice. And I don't know, I guess I just didn't expect the answer to be, oh, the canned juice is heavy. Nonetheless, I jaunt down to the trash chute, and when James rips it open, he really goes hog wild, you know? I mean, just tears into there. Luckily, not for nothing as the last coin was buried in the heap. As I'm headed back to the other building, I look around the room with the combination lock in it. When I finally get to the toilet, I'm mortified as it tells me there's something in it. And I know what comes next. Well, despite how awful that was, it was fake. And now I have the combination to the safe, which ended up having a bunch of ammo in it. Forget it for now though, as we have all 3 coins and head back to the dresser to solve the riddle. Using every last bit of brain power I have, I'm able to piece this together and grab the key to the apartments upstairs. Key in hand, I head back to the line house. There's a shattered glass door in here that leads to a catwalk outside. Following it brings us to a room that has a key for the stairwell on this floor and a save point. Oh man, that's crazy that it's got a save point right here. We make our way back to the stairwell and... It was so hard to tell if I was doing damage here. Thank God I stuck James's hand down that toilet, because I just get to really lay into Pyramid Head here. This eventually makes him turn heel and we stay in hot pursuit. Who else should we run into other than the girl who kicked the key away from James earlier? James notices she has a letter in her hand. When James asks about this, she says that it's none of his business and that he never loved Mary anyways. Continuing down the street, we start walking on the burnt earth tones of brick, and gates begin cascading over us. As James got closer, the fog parted around a sign that stood above his tiny little body. Rosewater Park. While casing the joint, I contemplated the difference between maze and labyrinth as I took each corner. Gathered some items, found this gazebo, and can only imagine what horrors lie ahead of me with this thing. After getting a good feel for the place, I can safely say this is more of a maze. I was feeling confident in my decision when I was walking down the pier and ran into...
Mary?
Yeah, so this is Maria, who apparently looks and sounds just like Mary, except as James makes the distinction, her hair and clothes are different. Two of the easiest things about yourself to change, and he's like, well, I guess there's no way you're the same person. James opens up about looking for his dead wife and the letter he received from her. Maria's unfazed by this and decides, well, helping you look for your dead wife is probably safer than just being here. And I do not know if that's true or not. The pair brainstorm where Mary could have meant by special place, and James thinks, oh, well, we had sex in a hotel. That's good enough. That's probably it. It's a long walk, but eventually Maria and I find our way out of Rosewater Park and start the long journey down the water's outline to the Lakeview Hotel. I fought my way through all of the mannequins that this game was quite literally throwing at me and walked for a bit longer. On our way to the hotel, there was the Silent Hill Historical Society. I wanted to pop in for a brief history refresher, but unfortunately the door to the entrance was locked. The boat launch was right next to it, and honestly, as soon as it listed Lakeview Hotel as one of its possible destinations, I knew something fishy was going on. Turns out I'm right though, because as we're making our way further down the hazy concrete, our pace deflates approaching where the road seems to have caved in on itself. Quite the insane natural phenomena, but nonetheless, this forces me to turn around and head back into town. As the town creeps up in front of us, we see Pete's Bolo-Rama come into view. As James cracks open the door, Maria says that she's gonna stay outside because she doesn't like bowling? I'm not here for fun. I'm not gonna pop in and bust out a couple casual frames right now, Maria. I would, but I won't. Because I understand the situation we're in. Inside, voices cut around the corner as Eddie and the little girl from earlier, I don't know, hang out, I guess. Eat some pizza, kill some time in the lanes, you know? She asks him in fairly vague terms what he did, throwing out a few suggestions like robbery or murder. Maybe this isn't exactly hanging out though, because as soon as Eddie denies these claims, she starts hitting home runs on homie's ego.
Ha! You're just a gutless fatso.
Cut back to James and we start to head to the next room. We hear Eddie ask the little girl if she's found the woman she was looking for, using the name Mary. Before James could get any answers though, the kid's sixth sense started ringing and she combat rolled towards the door to exit the building. James questions Eddie on how he can just sit there and not go after the child. According to him, she wants to be left alone and said he would only slow her down. We find out the girl's name is Laura, and with that, leave him to suckle his pizza in peace. As we exit the bowling alley, Maria comes running back to where we were standing, panting after giving chase to Laura. We followed her around the back to an alleyway where she slipped through a small opening, according to Maria. The only way to the other side is to go through Heaven's Night, the strip club in the building next to us. James tries the door, which is unfortunately locked. However, Maria has a few tricks up her sleeve as she pulls several small items out of different parts of her clothing and eventually unlocked the door. That was like a Rube Goldberg machine of picklocking. Easy enough. We make our way through the club without a problem and come out to the street. Like most of the streets in this town with an obviously small infrastructure budget, our northern path is blocked off, so we head back south until Maria spots Laura pushing the door to the hospital open. Upon entering, the receptionist office was already unlocked. Inside it, there's paperwork talking about some of the violent patients who lived here, and a door to a small filing room with documents, telling of a doctor's dilemma about keeping his patients in their drugs-induced delusions. We grab the bull key from the table as we're exiting. Of the other doors on the floor, most have had their locks broken, and the examination room and doctor's lounge are both locked. We head up to the second floor and the radio immediately starts crackling. We're introduced to a new enemy as they slash what I thought was a sword across James's chest. These are called bubblehead nurses, and they're actually carrying around a pipe. I get this rhythm down where I'm able to put them on the ground with my gun and then keep them there by bashing them with my melee weapon. This might be considerably longer to do, but I felt pretty good about conserving the ammo. As we search the second floor, we fight more feet people and stumble across the men's locker room, which this wasn't even Silent Hill themed. This is just what it's actually like in there. The key to the examine room was in here though, so it was almost worth it. Just a little further down the hall was a room where we found... Holy fuck, is that a shotgun? Aside from that, there is a small teddy bear sitting on the table next to the locker. James goes to pick up the stuffed animal, but is pricked by a needle sticking out of the top. Vowing to never let it hurt anyone else, he shoved it into his pocket and the pair went on their way. We head to the southwest area of the floor and find a hallway that has some offices and several rooms for patients on the other side. The first room has a typewriter that appears to have a code written on it, but it's no use to me now, so I just jot it down. Keeping it in mind though, we push back into the hall and a little further down. The radio starts to scramble again. I use my bop smack method to finish making my way down the hallway, mostly finding ammo and health items littered throughout. We do happen to find a lapis eye key, whatever that means. I decided with so many new tools to try, we should head back down to the first floor and peek around in the examination room. I may have missed something, but the only thing I found here of importance, well, not even important as far as I know right now, the only thing I saw here that stood out was this posting on a whiteboard with this writing on it. I assumed it was a clue and headed to the third floor. Okay, so we're caught up where we need to be and we make our way to the third floor. The door to the west wing is locked with a keypad attached to it. Luckily, I write things down instead of trying to remember them, so slipping by was no problem. I pummel a bubblehead nurse and slip into a nearby room. Maria suddenly doesn't feel well and says she's hungover. With these people still obtuse about their current situation, James tells Maria to lay down after she pops some pills. Then he's like, alright, well, you're probably fine here. Alright, I'm gonna go. On the nightstand next to her was the roof key, which I snatched. I don't know if that was hers, but it's mine now. The last room at the end of the hallway has a box that has been tightly chained to the area around it and secured with 4 different locks on the box itself. The code from the typewriter we found unlocked the pin lock, but I left it for the time being though, since I wasn't sure I had what else I needed for it. The shower room was about as gross as you would imagine it, but while in there, James spots something down the drain. I don't have anything thin enough to fit down there to fish it out yet, so I dip. With the entire building scoured, we make our way to the roof. If I'm being honest, pretty boring up here. Not a lot going on. Oh, torn pages about a patient documenting the hospital's treatment of them leading to their suicide? Whatever, I'm out of... James wakes up in the special treatment room where we find what I assume is the other code to the chained up loot crate. Using the new code we just found, our lapis eye and purple bull key, we open the box and find a single piece of hair. Yeah, I wasn't too impressed either until you remember the shower drain that has something stuck in it. James attaches the bent needle he got from the teddy bear earlier to his new trusty strand of hair and dips it in for a rinse. It attaches to and brings the elevator key out of the drain. Now we can take the elevator down to the first floor west wing that was previously locked off to us. Down here, we finally find Laura, and she is just the worst. She tells James she and Mary were friends in the hospital a year ago. He outbursts into a tantrum, shouting liar at the small girl. James ends the conversation, declaring this is no place for a kid, and grabs Laura to leave. She begins protesting, like any reasonable person being grabbed against their will, and says she needs to grab an important letter. James simps as soon as he hears it's from Mary and follows her down to a locked room that she just happens to have the key to. James does not question this at all, and he ducks into the room. Of course, the door closes behind him and Laura locks him in. Laura asks him what the magic word is to get out, and instead of just saying please, he starts banging on the door and calls her a snotty little brat. What? Did you expect her to just be like, you right? Because of James's apparent lack of common sense, we are now trapped in this room with these two gross creatures called flesh lips. This fight was a little fun, if not a little disorienting. While the camera can be used very effectively to create a sense of fear of what's just outside your vision, it's also a load of hot garbage a lot of the time. It pans slowly, it'll begin panning the correct way, and then immediately flip around despite the fact my direction hasn't changed. The camera, paired with the fact that I decided to play on 2D controls, means there's a lot of doing accidental big U-turns. I think there's a lot at play here with the camera as a design choice, but when it comes to execution, it can tend to fall a little flat. That being said, the fight consisted of the small room we'd been locked in as the two flesh lips swung above us, trying to choke us with their disgusting little toes. Hey, stop that. I see what you're doing. Thinking about those gross little monster toes? Put that away. Imagine my surprise when a third one started lowering down from the ceiling slowly. Okay. Not a whole lot of choice here, so I murder this third one as well. Upon casting the final blast, a woman starts whispering James's name, and we wake up in an area of the map called the Garden. Now look, I might not have a natural green thumb necessarily, but this is not a garden. This sucks. We're still in the hospital, but it has become even more vile and decrepit than before. The doors were covered in padding, and the floors were so gross looking it made the bottom of my feet tingle. 21 years later, and the imagery is still so effective. Our map is also wiped clean, so we have to go back around the new landscape of the hospital. On the second floor, there was a power cell battery, and we also got a basement storeroom key. Huh. I checked before, and there wasn't a basement storeroom. While on this floor, we checked the room we left Maria in, who is, of course, gone. I bob and weave around enemies to cut across the stairwell and head back down to the storeroom. Sure enough, it's just right at the bottom of the... Okay, what is that noise supposed to be? It sounds like a baby crying, screeching on a whiteboard, and a window getting cleaned all at the same time. We go into the basement where there is another very inconspicuous bookshelf here. This time laden in bloodstained handprints, all facing in one direction. James goes to push it out of the way when Maria decides to crash through the door. She's upset with James for not coming to rescue her.
All you care about is that dead wife of yours.
That's a crazy thing to say. Unfortunately, James is nothing short of a simp, not batting an eye at her erratic behavior. Maria insists they continue to search for Laura as she feels compelled to want to save her. No, I don't think we should do that, honestly.
Behind the bookshelf, there's a ladder leading to a small cement room that has a copper ring on the floor. We grab this off the ground and head out.
Unfortunately, James is at the helm of this ship as the couple head to the third floor to double-check missed rooms. At this point, I started trying to conserve at least a little bit of ammo and use the shotgun to knock the enemies down to just run past them. This was a decent plan for now. There was starting to be too many bobblehead nurses for me to really just take down with my whacking method effectively. Not much up here though, as we quickly find our way back to the elevator. As the elevator creaks to the next floor, someone comes over the radio and says James is the next contestant on a game show. He has to answer 3 questions correctly, with each of the answers corresponding to a number. If he can get all 3 of them correct, I get whatever is inside of this box. It was an interesting change of pace to say the least. The questions consisted of the name of 2 locations that you could just find on the map, and the third, harder question was the name of the man who murdered 2 children. I figured my memos were a good place to start, and it's a little buried in the back at this point, but at the apartments we found a newspaper clipping about this incident. Inside we find a mountain of ammo, which feels good after how much I've used through this hospital. We took the elevator to the 2nd floor because I realized I never touched these doors in my panic running by the bobble nurses. They were waiting for me outside the elevator, but I was far too quick and was able to blast them back and leave space to escape by them. None of the doors I tried opened until the very end of the hallway, where I was able to enter the day room. Conveniently placed in the center of the room is a refrigerator. James attempts to hoist the fridge open but is unable to on his own. He asks Maria for help and she berates him for needing help.
After some convincing, she helps James open the door and the pair find a lead ring.
Next, I wasn't really sure what to do and had to wander around for a while until I was in the west wing of the 3rd floor and saw this oddly shaped door handle. Upon further inspection, we see that it is actually this lady that someone painted on the door. I had to use the 2 rings I had found on the door, placing them on the finger stretched out from it. I'm not sure why, but this is like really uncomfortable imagery for me. They got something for everyone in here because this really creeped me out. Through the lady door, there was a stairwell that led down and eventually turned into a straightaway staircase. We followed the staircase down until it became a hallway. Then suddenly, Pyramid Head appears around the corner. Slamming James face first into the wall at every turn, we eventually get to a hallway with an elevator at the end of it. Maria and him sprinted towards it as James stumbles into the elevator and turns around to see the doors closing on Maria's hands. The unforgiving force was already there though. As the blade went through her body, the elevator doors shut, leaving James collapsed in the elevator, once again, alone. Which honestly, man, like, thank God. Maria kind of sucks. Maria kind of sucked. Like, thank God. To the ding of the elevator, James steps off, back on the 1st floor of the hospital. I try all of the doors on the 1st floor, but the only unlocked one is the wooden door in perfect shape. Inside, there's a hospital lobby key, a map with Better Wrench written on it, and a block corner circled. Get the hell out of this place, huh? We're back on the streets, baby, and we gotta go get this wrench. While running through town, I'm forced to take this tunnel that has a creature hanging from the grate underneath me. This disgusting abomination to your eyeballs is called a mandarin, and in case you're just dying to know, at the end of those long, gross appendages, those are lips hanging onto the grates. We find a wrench on the porch of the house that was circled on the map. The letter nearby tells us something is buried at Rosewater Park that is fastened down with bolts, hence the wrench. So I went to Rosewater Park to dig up the lost treasure. After digging it up and using the wrench to open it, we find a bronze key that opens up the Historical Society. As you guessed, that's our next stop. Inside is a small museum with pictures hung around. Some of the pictures have historical landmarks, others reminisce about the town's dark past, you know, the cult activity taking place, or this picture of Pyramid Head that is a lingering reminder that the town used to be made up of executioners pretty much exclusively. Everyone here is an executioner. Mom, dad, your siblings, grandma. Placed precariously inside the Historical Society is a huge hole in the wall, which, of course, James is like, I just gotta know what's in there. So we head in. We continue down deeper into the Historical Society's forbidden hole. What we find is an office room that seems to be charred, or maybe all the metal is rusted profusely. On the table, there's a sheet that simply has a prisoner's assigned number on it, with the date, September 11th, 1820. While continuing to explore, I find some more hung paintings, and while they look like the ones in the Upper Historical Society, the plaque underneath says the prisoners here got to choose to either be skewered or strangled, because this choice is the prisoner's last taste of freedom. Oh wow, look at this huge hole here in the ground. Well, isn't it just my lucky day? Bottoms up. Just like that, James jumped into the hole feet and head first, ass in the air. James plummets deeper into the bowels of Silent Hill, hoping to find what makes this city tick. As he reaches the bottom, water splashes around his feet, but as he looks up, he realizes he has nowhere to go, and he really is just at the bottom of a well. So I just started clicking around, trying to interact with things. When I went up to the wall, the text box said that it was just a normal wall and I wouldn't be able to climb it. Well, I'm not trying to climb it. The only room in this area was a padded one with a key in the back corner of it. Upon picking up the key, bugs appear all over after a flash of darkness, and we have to punch a code in to escape. I'm not sure if I was supposed to just guess the code, but the keypad only had 3 numbers visible, and the rest of it had just been rusted in different colors from lack of usage, so I just guessed. The key we found is to the gate that creates the floor of this, vertical hallway? James looks around, panning the flashlight around until it lands on the familiar but still very off-putting face of Eddie. He's holding a gun, and when the light finally meets his face, his first instinct is to tell James that killing people isn't a big deal. The camera pulls back, revealing the dead person on the table. James is more than a little uncomfortable with the situation. Eddie goes mask off though when he not only admits to killing them, but that the reason he did it was because they looked at him wrong. Eddie, that's not chill, man. Like, I gotta run. Oh, alright, bye. The next bit of gameplay, much like the rest, consists of pushing through the prison to collect items to unblock the next area. The first thing I happen upon is a hatch in the ground, presumably leading to a long hole, but I have been wrong before. There's no handle on it though, which is a weird design choice, but we need to find something that we can attach to it. We make our way to the other side of the complex, dodging lying figures, finding a lighter in the visitor's room and a wax doll in one of the cells. There's a big courtyard through a pair of doors that seems to be completely empty. While walking through it though, the noises of a horse galloping start to run through the open area. Sometimes this sound seemed really far away, and then suddenly would sound like if it was running at me. The gallows in the center of the courtyard are the real interest here. Underneath, there are 3 cutouts for 3 tablets to fit into. The tablet of the gluttonous pig I already found on a pushcart in the cafeteria when we first jumped down after seeing Eddie, and the tablet of the seductress was also found along the way in a shower. I have to dive back into the corridors though to find the other one, and despite the fact that there are only lying figures throughout this area, the weakest enemy in the game, the atmosphere around the prison was truly terrifying. The tablet of the oppressor was down a hallway of cells that had no enemies in it. It's in one of the cells, and upon grabbing it, the cell door locks and we're temporarily unable to get out. It seemed like the noises were getting closer and closer, and every part of my body was clenched, waiting. But then, nothing happened. The door unlocked and we were able to just leave, so I got the fuck out of there. With all 3 tablets stored safely in his jacket, James ran back to the courtyard and approached the gallows, and what I'm pretty sure was no particular order, pushed these slabs into place. Hearing screaming and more horse noises, but then, nothing. I started heading back to the door thinking I may have done something wrong. There's a horseshoe wrapped around the door that I'm able to take, and it occurs to me what a beautiful handle this would make. Back at the trapdoor, I combined the wax, lighter, and horseshoe to cement the handle onto the trapdoor. I'm not really sure what kind of wax they were using that could be both melted by a pocket lighter, but also solidify strong enough to bear the weight of an entire metal trapdoor, but another pit to test our luck and dive into. There's nothing really around except a repulsive odor, and piling corpses before we find another hole to jump down. Before we do though, James remarks, "This corpse into this hole?" So, thinking it was more of an instructive thing, I spent a moment trying to push the body down the hole. That didn't work though, so I just jumped into it. Oh, look, another hole. Okay, well this can't go much deeper. The elevator descends for a minute and a half, taking us to what I can only assume is the literal middle of the earth. Where is my Silent Hill movie starring Brendan Fraser? At the bottom of the endless elevator, we find ourselves in a labyrinth consisting of multiple levels, accessed by ladders leading in and out of lower passages.
Down one of these paths, we solve a fun face puzzle and find who else but Maria. James is like, damn, that's crazy, man. I saw you get stabbed. And she just like gaslights him and she's like, no, that didn't happen. That's not a real thing. Anyways, remember that tape we made here? Confused by this though, James is like, whoa, how do you know about that? I thought you weren't Mary. And she hits him back with the, I'll be whoever the fuck you want me to be. Well, I don't want you to be anyone. I just want to know who you are. These two sweethearts just can't keep their hands away from each other though, as Maria insinuates giving sexual favors in exchange for getting her out of the cage. They either both have really poor depth perception or James has a below average penis because she claims she can't do anything through these bars. So, back into the labyrinth. Down another passage, we're led to an area that wraps around in a big hexagon. While trying to search here though, Pyramid Head and two mandarins appear and begin chasing me, albeit slowly. Now, what you're supposed to do is get to the center of this hexagon, find this ammo, and pick up Pyramid Head's great knife as a new weapon, and then leave. What I actually did was assume I had to fight him and land the finishing blow with the great knife. After about 15 minutes of running around this hexagon, killing both of the mandarins and wasting so much ammo on this, I came to the conclusion he's probably just invincible here. I left and continued forward, eventually climbing this ladder to discover a newspaper on the ground with a door in front of it. As soon as we get up, we hear Angela scream through the door. I stopped to read the newspaper, which details the murder of a man named Thomas, but his last name was scratched out. James bursts through the door to find Angela cowering from a new enemy called an abstract daddy in this room that has skin stretched throughout it, and these holes with metal pistons pushing through them. We dunk the abstract daddy and Angela goes in for the KO. James says that she should calm down and she takes this aggressively as an order. Which honestly, James, shut the fuck up, what do you mean? Let her beat the shit out of this thing. She accuses James of only being nice to her to pursue a sexual relationship with her. Upon his refusal, she didn't believe him and calls him a disgusting pig. Then says she knows about James and that he probably killed his wife after he found another woman. I'm not a murder expert here, but isn't it usually like the other way around? The easy option isn't, honey, I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. It's been real, but I'm leaving and I'm taking the taco supplies. No, the easy option is, I'm gonna kill my fucking wife. After leaving Angela, there was a puzzle, which was a nice change of pace at this point. There are two rooms it takes place in. The first room had 6 bodies hung by nooses, each with a paper on their face that had what their crime was that led them here. In the similar second room, there were 6 empty nooses and a metal sheet with a riddle written on it, giving the order that I needed to pull the nooses in. Each part of the riddle corresponding to the noose placement of the corpses and their sins in the other room. Who is down here upkeeping these puzzles? I'm not asking in a realism way or whatever, but I just pull yourself into the shoes of this reality. What poor minimum wage person gets paid to come down here and do this upkeep? Do they have to jump through all the holes every time? Or do they have like a personal elevator they use? Is their elevator at least faster than the one we took? The puzzle itself was fairly simple though, especially since my frontal lobe is fully developed and I thought of just writing it out on paper. That made it much simpler. I gave all those nooses a good tug, but then nothing happened. I reread the riddle to see what I missed and went back down the hall. Turns out I do know how to read though, because when I got back to the rooms with the bodies in it, one of them was gone. All that's left in its place was the note that hung on its face and a key. With the key, I'm able to bust open these handcuffs and wheel this gate open. We finally reach Maria's cell only to find her dead. Again. James sits over her body and weeps, but knows he must keep moving. We come across a cemetery that is filled with ammo laying around, which was a pretty interesting choice to leave bullets instead of flowers on these graves. Upon further inspection, one of the graves is actually another pit for us to jump into. We land and follow a long, silent, bleak hallway. James opens the door at the end of it. Green gas begins pouring out, allowing our eyes to scan the meat locker and land
on Eddie, who has surrounded himself in bodies. This is Eddie's breaking point as he begins venting about all the ridicule and verbal abuse he has received throughout life. He laughs at the bodies around him, remarking that when you're dead, none of your intelligence or good looks matter. James, being an idiot, tried to reason with him, but under the extreme mental pressure and distorted thoughts Eddie was having, he took this as an insult and turned on James. This fight took place in 2 different sized meat lockers and overall was pretty much fine. It was a short fight that was more annoying than challenging, as Eddie would run towards you and just give you these really weak punches. Sitting over the body, James mourns the loss of life and has a brief moment of what seems to be acceptance.
Mary. Did you really die 3 years ago?
On the other side of the meat locker, there are big hangar doors that lead to the outside of the prison, back into the familiar fog. We reached the boat launch, finally, now able to head towards our destination, Lakeview Hotel. So I hopped in this boat, but did not realize at first there was this big glowing light we were supposed to be following across the lake. I was trying to use the map to figure out where I was, and unsurprisingly was getting pretty frustrated. Fortunately, finding the light set me back on course to the hotel. Upon docking, James looks up and comments how this place hasn't changed in 3 years. We followed the dock to the hotel courtyard and headed in. Like most buildings in this town, immediately after entering, there's a map hung on the bulletin board nearby. This map has waiting for you written on room 312, Mary and James's room from when they stayed here. The map specifies 4 guests on it, and we can see there are large areas not marked yet. The hotel is made up of 3 floors, with the centerpiece being a big music box in the first floor main hall. It's got 3 indentations on the top face of it, each with an inscription describing a different fairy tale princess in front of it. Princess who fled the night, lost her voice, and awoke from death. We begin to search for these tiny princesses, and early on we head into the hotel restaurant. Little does James know, while looking around, Laura is hiding behind the piano and scares him when she slams on the keys. James was skeptical when the little girl said that she had known Mary in a hospital visit from a year ago. She presents a letter written to her by Mary to prove their friendship with one another. Mary apologizes in this letter, wishing things had turned out differently and asking Laura not to hate James. At the very end, she wishes Laura a happy 8th birthday. James looks up from this letter and asks Laura how old she is. With confidence, she assures him that she just turned 8 last week. When I was playing through this game, somehow I did not realize how huge this piece of information was. Through this, we realized that Mary did not die 3 years ago, but less than a week ago. We learned the reason Laura came here was in hopes of finding Mary, since she had always talked about going back to Silent Hill someday. Upon searching for another letter and being unable to find it, she bolts out and James is left alone with his thoughts.
We're just blonde boys doing what blonde boys do!
Through the main hall and up the stairs, we get to the 2nd floor. Close to the entrance is another smaller staircase leading up, but is currently blocked by a gate we need to unlock. Descending back down and heading towards the room, there is a briefcase that is only unlockable with a 4-letter code, and next to it is a photo of presumably the code. However, it has been covered with black paint. Not a whole lot I can do with either of those things right now. On the other side of the 2nd floor is an employee elevator. When trying to get in, it makes a loud buzzing noise because of the weight capacity. Above the buttons is a sign that says you can only hold the weight of 1 person. And let me tell you, it means 1 person. Honestly, I thought it was like a metaphorical weight of 1 person, so I put the picture of Mary in the locker. I tried storing some of James's belongings in the locker, but it only fits the weight of 1 person that weighs as much as James or less. I did not figure out the puzzle right away though, and thought I was missing something, so I decided to come back. At this point, it kind of felt like the worst of the enemies were over. The abstract daddies and mannequins all over were slow and not super damaging. I was able to slip out of the main hall and run down to the basement fairly quickly, and never really took any damage here. Down here was a bottle with the word thinner on it, so I went back to the elevator because I assumed this was some sort of thinning pill that would make me lighter to make the elevator go down. As it turns out though, this is actually paint thinner. Guess it's good you did not ingest that, James. We take this back to the hotel room and are able to clear the code to the briefcase, which turns out to be love. Aww. Inside is our first music box, The Princess Who Fled at Midnight, Cinderella. Feeling far too confident, I went back to the elevator and in a moment of YOLO, put all of James's stuff in the locker and boarded. Once we're out, the hallway leads us eventually to the hotel bar, completing the loop and giving us access to everywhere now. So where the hell are the last 2 music boxes? Well, since I had checked every door I could already, it meant that I had missed them and needed to retrace my steps. Walking through and trying all of the doors, I realized you could go back outside to the docks we arrived on. While looking around out here, I found the next music box on the fountain. This one was the one who lost her voice, Ariel. The third music box proved to be much more difficult to find though. So difficult, in fact, that I had to look it up. Being pretty frustrated by the whole thing myself, imagine how dumb I felt when I found out it's just in the basement pantry. Look at this. Not only is it extremely hard to even make out the object there, but when I was trying to pick it up, the music box had the smallest hitbox. Unimportant now though. James grabs the Snow White music box and we head back to the larger music box in which all of these go. With them all in place, a song plays and a key to the 3rd floor pops out of the device. Room 312, the room Mary and James stayed at, allegedly. After this long journey, we push through the door and find light pouring in from the window onto a room in perfect shape. At the far side of the room was a TV with a VHS player next to it. We can finally watch the tape that Maria was talking about earlier. We see flashes of James by Mary's bedside. And then watch as he smothers her with a pillow. The truth finally boiling over in James's head. His wife didn't die of illness 3 years ago. James killed her within the week. James was just sitting in the middle of the room, reflecting and coming to terms with the truth of what he's done. Laura comes into the room asking James if he's found Mary, and he says, "No, Laura, not only did I not find her, I killed her, she's dead, and she's never coming back." Understandably, she's pissed, starts yelling at James and pummeling the dude. Exiting the room sends us to the fog world, I guess. I learned this later, but throughout the game, we've been going between the fog world and Otherworld. Silent Hill was founded on and around Toluca Lake, which dense fog rises from. This fog creates a supernatural phenomenon which blurs the lines between reality and dream. This can slip deeper, though, into the Otherworld. There's a lot of games, but I didn't know there was just like this much lore. I didn't know so much was explained about Silent Hill. So we are back in the fog world now and see the hotel in its more true form, leaking, charred from burning, and parts of the basement flooding. There's a tape that has James's doctor telling him that Mary is going to die for the first time. James gets upset with the doctor about it though. Standing there like, "Well, you're a doctor, so heal her, come on." We find Angela standing on a staircase between 2 corpses strung up on frames. And when she first sees us, she confuses us for her mom, who she's been looking for since the beginning of the game when we met her in the cemetery. She realizes it's James and apologizes. She thanks him for saving her earlier, but confesses she wishes he hadn't. Angela asks for her knife back, but James refuses, and this makes her think he's saving it to kill himself. But he would never do that though. We continue to push through the hotel ruins, running over mandarins, when we come across the Mega Save Wall. The biggest save of all. This is it. The cold concrete under his shoes, James moved to the next room, looking up to see who else but Maria, getting stabbed by Pyramid Head. Again, getting killed by 2 Pyramid Heads. Let this poor woman's soul rest, please. James decides that this is the end, this is it. He's ready to face this challenge, finally realizing that Pyramid Head is a part of himself he created in his own subconscious to punish him for all of his sins. I'm not gonna lie, after playing the game through, I probably could have set the action level on hard. A lot of this game seemed kind of easy and this fight was no exception. I ran around and blasted them with the shotgun and the rifle. Eventually, after enough close calls with those long spears of theirs, the pair both lay on their spears, symbolizing James no longer seeking punishment, leaving them lifeless. I go up and search them both to find a red and a rustic egg. I plop those puppies into the door and went in. One of the doors had a long metal staircase that I followed. At the top, James finds Maria, except this time, she more closely resembles Mary. James says he doesn't need her anymore, and this makes her very unhappy. This fight was pretty fun. I like that there was more stuff going on. That bat attack is so quick and just holds you in one place for so long. The bat attack is so quick and holds you for so long, stunning you. If she gets too close, she'll grab you and start sucking the life out. It was then that I remembered the last time I was in my inventory. I had 97 handgun bullets. I just gave it all I had at this point. I guess maybe I'd been a little too conservative with my ammo. She fell down and I was too excited, so I kept shooting. We have a final scene with Mary where James gets to resolve things with her, and she asks James to live his life and go on. She hands him a letter and we watch as Laura and him leave Silent Hill through the cemetery. An air of hopefulness and a better tomorrow.